Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros and LEAP, helping students to succeed in all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school throughout Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with test, school, and life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 60 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to explore today is the testing game plan for the class of 2027. But first, let's meet our special guest, Brian Eufinger.
Brian Eufinger graduated with honors from Washington University in St. Louis in May 2004. Brian is frequently invited to speak about test prep, college admissions, and scholarship at PTSA meetings at Atlanta area high schools, as well as Edison Prep's free parent meetings. Brian serves on the board of directors of the National Test Prep Association, and he is the author of the invaluable resource for families, meritaidgrids.com. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Brian, we are so happy to have you on the show. The testing game plan for a high school graduating class has become a bit of a tradition for us. But also, I don't know if you've been counting, but we've been carefully keeping track of how many episodes.
I tabulated it today, Mike.
Today is number 10. This is your 10th episode. And listen, it would take half the show for me to list all the different topics you've discussed. I'll just stress for listeners that you, Brian, have been on the show from episode number 28 to episode 635.
There we go.
We don't even know what number this is going to be, which is to say you have been a really important guest and friend of the show from the very beginning. We're excited, as always, to have you on. Please just very quickly go over what you've been up to lately.
So we just today finished all the construction on our new office. We expanded our space by 1,000 square feet. So bigger, more mocks, more creative options, more simultaneous classes, mocks and things. So that's exciting. And so that's the big thing has been actual blood, sweat, and tears, just getting all the stuff moving. Moving is not easy, but we're so excited it's done, and it's going to be just in time because now we're going to be hosting legacy mocks and enhanced ACT mocks and SATs and classes, and we're going to use every square inch right away.
That's something I don't miss about having an office, the literal blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making an ideal learning environment.
So, Brian, you were with us when there was a big trust transition a few years ago for the digital SAT. And of course, at that time, we realized that we had to have a conversation about how to advise that class of 2025. So now, of course, we are upon another major transition, which almost is a bigger deal because ACT for all of us hasn't really ever changed. So we want to talk about sort of some of the considerations, as far as with this new test change, what does that mean for students in the class of 2027? So let's just launch with what are some of the main issues you see for students in the high school class of 2027 with regards to their testing plans?
Sure. So first of all, it comes down to a couple things. Figuring out SAT versus ACT is the first order of business. We are big fans of measure twice, cut once when it comes to mock tests. Kids are busy enough junior year with everything else going on. It's better to just have, find the stronger horse and ride that horse. But if you have a PSAT score and a busy kid, you could use that and a mock ACT to make the SAT versus ACT decision. So that's been true always. It's a little bit different though right now because your math level, as always, we don't teach grammar in this country after 8th grade mostly. So math is the tail that wags the dog. And so if a sophomore right now, class of 2027, is in Algebra 2 and going to finish with Algebra 2, they'll have the vast majority of the math they're ever going to get or need for the tests. And it's easy with a little bit of tutoring or self-studying to cover the small gaps, cosmetic surgery, not major surgery, so to speak. So if someone's in Algebra 2, that's all the kids that are coming to our office right now every weekend without us even advertising. Like it's just it's time. It's that time where the sophomores that are Algebra 2 are coming here and taking mocks to get their plan for the summer or the fall for whenever together. If they're in Algebra 2, if they're in Algebra 2 as a junior, it is time to ethically hurry up and wait. We do sales calls with moms all the time, and I always tell them, right now, I admire the rigor and you want to do it right now. It'd be like inducing labor at 19 weeks. You will eventually be okay. But right now, you are so far from okay. We just got to let baby grow for a little longer. And call me mid-October. We'll take mocks and then start right after New Year's if you are in Algebra 2 as a junior. That's the big dividing line for us. Now, the difference is we normally don't tutor that many sophomores, but there are enough sophomores, as long as they are in striking distance. The devil you know versus the devil you don't. I've never tutored more sophomores than this because if you have a 19 and you need a 32 on the ACT, we're gonna be friends for a long time. And so that person, anything's possible. Probably not a plus 13 happening between now and July, but there are so many people who have busy junior year, sports, APs, everything else, who, if you're just a couple points away and you're better on the legacy, the existing ACT, then why not go kill it? Like we're on track to probably have not 200, probably 150, literally 150 sophomores. Will kill it before the new enhanced ACT even debuts in September.
Okay, so let me anchor our conversation by first of all explaining what now is, right? We're talking about the end of the academic year is when we'll publish this conversation. And that means that the graduating class of 2027 will be entering the summer before junior year. And that timeline issue is really key because I agree that Algebra 2 is what determines a student's timeline, all other things being equal. In that if a student is focused on the SAT, they definitely need Algebra 2. And you know, you can prep, your prep over the summer is going to be a lot of pre-prep for Algebra 2, and you're going to plan to probably keep testing, keep prepping and testing into the fall, maybe even up to December. Whereas the ACT still, it's always been the kind of test where, you know, everything up to geometry carried a lot of weight. That's that still holds true for the legacy test. And we're talking about concepts of legacy ACTs, which is the version of the ACT, the 4 mandatory multiple choice sections that last 3.5 hours. And that will still be an option in June and July of 2025. And then the enhanced ACT, which we'll get into, will be the law of the land. Everybody will be taking the enhanced ACT starting in September of 2025, whether they're taking it on paper or computer.
So that begs the question, if you're in the class of 2027, then potentially you have a June and July ACT in the legacy current format. So Brian, what are some of your thoughts? Should this class of 2027s consider the legacy ACT?
I think I'm a big fan of sample size. I was not a big fan when the SAT went from 154 to 90 questions. I'm not a big fan of when this test got shorter either. I get it. Kids love short tests, get back to TikTok more quickly. However, it's just like a poll for a presidential election. Smaller sample size means more volatility. The percentiles have not changed. So given that we have 101, if a kid goes on Reddit who wants to self-study, there's 101 technically ACTs floating around at the current tests, and the W know versus the W don't. Again, if they are in striking distance and have the free time and desire to go kill it, good for them. Go enjoy the rest of high school afterwards. But then again, it doesn't even matter if they do. There's kids who are saying, I won't finish, but you know what? So just like when the digital SAT transition happened a year ago, 2 Marches ago, only one school, Princeton, came out and said, we will not super score across the formats. And then they quickly walked that back once they realized they were the only person that was being mean. And so to my knowledge, I don't know any school that has even gone as far as Princeton temporarily did. And so, what if a kid does knock out 1 or 2 of the sections with the June, July, and only has to work on one section or 2 sections in the fall? So that can help spread the work out. So there really is no downside to taking it. Plus, unlike the SAT, you can type in the words "how to delete an ACT." So even if you're applying to Georgetown, hey, I'm sending what I still have Georgetown. So there's really not any downside to if I rarely tell a person who wants to work hard, no, you can't work hard yet.
Your point about sample size is well taken. First of all, just the number of questions on what is now called the legacy ACT leads to a lot more certainty. If you have been earning a certain score in practice, you're more likely to walk away with that score on the official exam. But also, just there's so much practice material. When the SAT was changing over to the digital format, there wasn't a huge rush to get in your last paper SAT, not like in previous test revisions on the SAT side. In this instance, it's not that I recommend a mad rush to get in and take an ACT before September because we're afraid of the enhanced ACT. It's more we really know and appreciate the benefits of the legacy ACT to our students. And if they're ready, like don't pass up a chance.
right?
Right.
With all the
And one
practice
thing,
material.
one important note about this transition being so different than the digital SAT. The first digital SAT happened in March. And at least here in Atlanta, Georgia, every market is different. Anyone who is ever going to get a crazy high score already got it well before New Year's, much less March. So
Right.
there weren't a lot of potential 1600s ready to go there in May. There never will be. So those kids are the national merit strivers in the fall. So that alteration in the timeline where the current 2027 class is untouched does mean, I mean, we are a small company. Do we already have three sophomores who got 36s on the April test? Three of our four 36s on the sophomore test are on the April test were
Well,
sophomores
that's who would take a
That's
test in sophomore
right.
year.
right, exactly. So there's no it really the fact that it's not by the March test, like everyone's already done anyways, almost. So that down here at least. So it's a different market, a different timeline.
Well, I think the consideration, though, for this legacy versus enhanced is that we all know that a lot of the changes ACT is making with these enhancements are things that generally are welcome. Fewer questions, shorter tests, more time per question. So many things that would definitely make it seem like this is probably going to feel like a better test to take. So for some students, those changes are probably worth exploring once they get into their junior year, right? In terms of when the new enhanced test is in full force, right? Knowing that
Sure.
everybody testing from September 2025 beyond is going to get this new test, and they get the new test in either a paper or a digital format, depending upon their choice in the region that they live in.
Yeah.
Let's say,
I mean,
right?
80%, I mean, yeah, I mean, probably 80% plus of the class of 2027, if they take the ACT, will be solely taking the new enhanced ACT.
Now, you mentioned something earlier I want to kind of come back to a little bit about like testing policies, right? Can you talk a little bit about how testing policies, obviously score test optional, or the science being optional, how are these policies changing and how might that influence somebody's thought about taking the test or when to test?
Sure. So one quick thing, just so parents don't misunderstand, you can delete ACT scores. You cannot delete SAT scores. An important difference for the very few schools that have that policy. But the new enhanced ACT will have two yes/no binary choices, technically three, of are you taking the test on paper or computer? Your choice. Are you taking the science section? Yes, no. And are you taking the essay section, the writing section? Yes, no. So get writing out of the way first, because writing, the last holdouts like West Point, Military Academy, don't care anymore. So this, for the first time this year, we're just telling people don't even, do it if you
Wait,
feel
did
like.
West Point finally jettison that requirement?
Yes.
Great. So we're done. So unless you are taking the ACT in school as part of a state assessment, you are not taking writing.
You're not opting in.
The main reason to take writing now, ironically, is if all the sites near you are full except for with writing. So then
No,
you
it's true.
might
Right. That
save
is
yourself
the
time. If it's
Doesn't that mean
closest
register
site.
for writing?
Yep. But now as far as digital and paper, I'm someone who has strong opinions about the data, because we here in Fulton County, Georgia, administer the school day digital test. And so I have a great data sample where you have February paper, followed by March school day test, followed by April paper. So over the last 2 years, 500 Fulton County kids we've tutored, and the data is pretty clear. English, no impact. Math and science, there's an impact, not being able to write on the actual questions. And then reading, depends, partially on speed. But I'm famous for a blog post I wrote called Winners Take the Test on Paper. It's a strong belief of mine, just because I call balls and strikes based on data. And a lot of the kids that are vocalizing their choice for the ACT right now are saying, I don't want a Chromebook that's 11 inches and the lag between questions when you click the questions. So I do like the fact that they're giving kids a choice of paper versus digital on this. I teach some pro bono boot camps in South Georgia, and I can't even attempt to pull off the level of Southern drawl that I'm about to right now. But there's a superintendent who the adjacent county here in Georgia administer the test digitally, shiny new toy in town. I don't even know whether this principal or this superintendent was digital or SAT versus ACT. It was just on the computer, and it did not go well. There's a mishap. And then his county did paper like normal, and he said to me, he's like, Brian, I love the fact that they are keeping both options available, because he's like, you know what? Paper don't glitch. And so paper don't glitch is the best. So, but yes, it's hilarious. So he's like, so I will stick with this school day test as long as I can have it, because rural Georgia internet is not always as great as it could be.
Yeah, I'm going to concur that I prefer the paper test for the time being. And,
I will concur as well.
yes, in New York State, I don't even think students are going to have that many digital options in the fall. I think that many schools are going to stick with the paper ACT, and they're right to. Just because of the nature of the ACT, it makes sense to take on paper. There are advantages to digital testing, there are advantages to paper testing, but I think all things being equal, you see more significant advantages on this version of the ACT on paper.
For sure.
So what we're really saying is one of the parts of probably anybody's game plan that we can recommend would be avoid the computer.
Sign up on paper,
Sign up on
skip the
paper.
writing. And now, Brian, I know you've been doing some research.
I have.
How optional, from the perspective of colleges, will the science section on the ACT be?
So my wife thinks I'm far too cynical. We were at Disney World on vacation when the announcements about the ACT changes came out. We were and so while we were sitting there in line for the Haunted Mansion, I literally went on GoDaddy.com and registered isscienceoptional.com, and my wife said I'm far too cynical because we all saw what test optional meant. So our company grew from 2 tutors to 23 tutors during test optional. So that's how test optional was. And I'm like, I bet it's probably the same for the air quotes optional science section. So we just used one of our email addresses and sent emailed the top 240 colleges and said, hey, what's your policy? To this day, many have still not decided. One of the ones that responded yesterday won't even decide till late June what their policy is for science. But here's the thing. Optional, as we learned, taking AP classes is optional. Doesn't mean it can't help. And writing the optional business essay for Indiana Kelley School of Business is optional. Doesn't mean it can't help.
This is not the same thing. If a school
it
says
depends.
that the science is optional, they're not going to look at the science score.
That's not what it means.
It's not like
That's not what it means.
they'll take
Only
the science
4%.
score as a bonus.
They still see it and they can see it and utilize it. Now here's the difference, and this is the big difference. Only 4% of schools gave an answer when they emailed back saying, we are not even setting our system up to be able to look at it, to see it, to utilize it. It cannot help you, it cannot hurt you because it does not exist. Like, that is a very different answer. Like, Purdue said, we may not even download it. That's a very
That's the
different answer.
point. That's the point, is that
But if
it's the same as writing for these.
It's going to be school
for schools.
specific.
But I don't think you can compare it to writing. You can't compare it to writing. Writing has been dead for many years.
I'm just saying, Amy doesn't like to see the two of us fight, but I'm going to push back and say that if science is optional from a school's perspective, they're not going to consider it at all. But I'm also saying that I think a lot of schools want the science.
We've had some kids go on tours, and I've had their parents say, "Please help me get some intel." Say, is it optional, meaning it cannot help you or hurt you in the process at all, like meaning you can't see it, or it's optional, meaning we will not automatically clerically reject you? Because
I think what you're suggesting is whether they're test blind for science, right? That might be the better way to
science optional, because the two are not related.
That's how I would. But I think the key thing is going to be the class of 2027, as I see it, will be in a position where I think, not really knowing if they take the ACT at least one of those times, they will want to log a science score so that when they go to apply, which of course will be in the fall of 2026, then we'll have a much better idea for them what these policies are, right? That's what I'm telling students.
Take the test, take the science, because the worst thing would be to take the test without science, then find out that you have to take the entire test again just 100%. To log a science score.
And I know that's going to happen because people are going to think they're cute and try to save 40 minutes in the front end, and then a year later have to start studying all over again to satisfy the requirement. If a kid applies to 12 schools, the odds that all 12 that none of them either require or prefer or mandate only for STEM majors. Like, some people say, oh, if you're applying to a hard major, what does that mean? That's such a vague answer. Apply if you're applying to a hard major. So it's a mess, and we'll continue updating that database on isscienceoptional.com every month. She re-emails the stragglers, and the funny part is, I think this is the most telling thing. So, our good friend Adam Ingersoll at Compass, he's awesome, and his people had the same idea that we did. We have emails that we've gotten from the same school where one admissions officer said one thing and the other one said the other. No one knows what's going on,
and that's the dilemma.
Nor will they. So
the recommendation is, take the science and decide what you want to do with it when you get to that point of applying to schools, I think is the safe play for students, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
So this is a strong game plan. I think we might have gotten ahead of a question, and we should probably address it now. As far as the class of 2027 is concerned, how optional are tests in general, right? Like we are coming out of a period of flux where every year the optionality or alleged optionality of standardized exams has changed. What is the status today, and what do we project for the class of 2027?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the pendulum keeps going backwards, and more. Miami went back to mandatory, Penn went back to mandatory.
Ohio
A lot of
State went back to mandatory.
a lot of schools are in that one more year syndrome, which one more year syndrome tells you everything you need to know. If you really believe it, say it loud, say it proud, be permanent. But even then, schools that were permanent, oh wait, we changed. So people, Harvard reneged, went back early. UT Austin reneged, went back early. So permanent doesn't really mean anything, anyways. But anyways, look at us. Like we are busy. I need a nap. We keep growing, and a lot of our tutoring friends are growing. And parents, if not for getting in, for merit aid. A huge portion of our company's business is, Alabama is a fine school, roll tide, but they're relatively reasonable to get into. But their entire merit aid grid, they're test optional for admission, but all their merit aid is just based on that. 30, if you get a single day 30 on the ACT, 112 grand at Alabama. And so a ton of people I tutor is like, wait, we can spend a little bit of money, not much at all, on tutoring and get 25 times the money back instantly straight from Alabama. That is a really good investment. No mutual fund gives you 25,000%. It's ridiculous. So it's easy money for kids who care.
I want to be ambitious in my next question. So I'm kind of going to load it with almost like three questions in one. So
Sure.
you're going to decide, Brian, how you want to unpack this. So first of all, I want you to talk a little bit about if you're part of the first wave of test takers with this enhanced. I want you to think about what does that mean for scores? And then I also want you to think about or kind of unpack what kind of resources students might need or use to really kind of predict where they might score with that new enhanced test scoring. So what do you want to kind of share about that?
Sure. So I will share one outlier. Do not take this person as normal, but just to show how some kids the wheels are turning. So I think it's going to be fine. I mean, triangles are still going to have 180 degrees, and the commas are still commas. So, to full transparency, it was hell on earth when we had to transform our SAT curriculum to digital because long passages, short passages, poetry, digital 3 hours, 2 hours. It was hell. 400 hours of changes. I expect to revise our entire ACT curriculum maybe in 20 hours instead of 400 because most of the 90% of the pages in our book are not changing. Just the stuff on timing and strategy is. So parents and kids should not be scared of the new ACT format because I'm not. I mean, I'm literally going to you guys know I like my phone a lot. I'm addicted. And so I'm going to turn my phone off and hide it for like 2 days and just write the whole darn thing and be done. And it's really going to be a 2 day project. It's not.
It's
a
going
big
to be
nothing burger.
simple. You're just going to change the no change option from capitalized to title case and bold, right? And that's going to be
No big deal.
a lot of the changes
50
are cosmetic.
questions, not 75.
There are some reporting category rebalances that we have to pay attention to, but the content isn't the issue that people are really concerned about. Like if you're worried about a new test,
It's predicting your score.
But it also might be the digital versus paper. I think the paper is going to be a much more stable test, especially to start with.
Sure. Well, I think just period. SAT, ACT, if you make the test shorter, it will become less stable, period. So both tests have gotten less stable. Now, the ACT fan in me says if you divide 141 by 90, you get 50. Are there 57% more questions? Yes. So that's not the worst thing in the world. Now, the thing is, I still prefer more questions on all tests at all times. But the thing is, one nice thing, a joke I make all the time. I teach the ACT classes, my wife teaches the SAT classes for our company, and the joke I make is on the current ACT, what do you call someone who misses 10 questions on the ACT? Still a perfect score. What do you call someone who misses 10 questions on the digital SAT? You can't even apply to Georgia Tech with it. So that is how sensitive the curve is when you have so few questions. So we have plenty of kids who are smart, but kind of careless geniuses who they like the fact that you can miss more questions. Now, is it going to be that you can only miss 6 or 7 and get a 36? That's still better.
No, I don't think it's going to happen at all. I think that first of all, the rounding has changed. So now instead of rounding at 0.5, you have to get 2/3 to round up. And as you said, right, the volatility of the score, I don't think that you're going to be able to get a 36 getting one question wrong. I think that that aspect is
And
going
we
to
don't
mirror
and we
the
don't
SAT
know, like, because
scale.
the tests that are released are not the ones that your mystery test taker on your last episode had, discussed. So no one knows on the new ones. But if you
That's
look
what
at
I'm saying. You
the
can project
released,
that this is
yeah,
likely to happen.
the released.
Well, that's the dilemma. The materials that are out there, right, are limited, at least in terms of in the current format to do diagnostic predictive scores. So one of the challenges for students that I'm sort of suggesting is if you take a practice test in, like, for example, the new red official study guide, you're going to see some volatility, which means that for some students they've got to create a testing timeline that allows for the fact that they might see this volatility and they're sort of rolling the dice maybe
Well,
another time or
yeah,
two
and they
more
need to
times
be
than they
more
would have in the
diligent,
past.
right? They can't be like so. I think that
Right.
some students like that they could make careless errors on the ACT and still win out. With the new scale, it's likely that you're really going to have to deliver on every question. When I had mentioned stability before, I wasn't even talking about the curve. I was saying paper don't glitch. And so
Without saying with that beautiful Southern accent, Mike.
I'm not gonna I'm
Um,
not gonna dishonor the South by trying it.
Well, I mean,
but
so I just happened just
Mhm.
for the reader's amusement. So it's not the worst. So if you look at this, I just happen to have
Nobody
a.
can see what you're holding
I
up. Don't
know,
worry about
I
it.
know. If you look at this piece of paper I have, it's just I happen to have the practice test 3 of the newly released Red Book tests. So if someone wants to get 34, can they miss? You can miss 4 on English, 4 on math, 1 on reading, 2 on science, and still have a 34. No problem. Like, so you can still miss 11 questions and get a top 0.5% score. So it's going to be harder. To be clear, it's going to be harder to get a 30, without the cushion at the top. But is minus 11 a 1490? It might be. I mean, you can't. They don't release the test, so no one knows anything. But I think there's still a cushion. I think that is still nice. But yes, the curve is going to have to be, by definition, harsher because there's fewer questions.
I want to take the last question for all of us. And that is historically, like you started with, Brian, you said a lot of times we've all tried to sort of shepherd our students to picking like the one best test, the one ring that rules them all. One of the things that I've been sort of ruminating on, and I think is probably how we will proceed to Sealy Test Pros and Leap, is to say to students in this next year, I do feel like advising students to only focus on one test from the very beginning is not necessarily their best strategy. And I'm wondering for each of you, what do you think about in terms of making a recommendation of find your one test and stick with it? What will you do?
So I've always been a fan of a unified approach to the SAT and ACT because there's tremendous overlap in the content that's tested. But I feel like the two exams, they met and now they are moving apart again to the point where, for timing purposes, for focus on certain content areas, I think it does make sense at this point for students once they know which test is right for them. And I don't necessarily expect that students take a full SAT and ACT before they begin, but at some point we'll pick a test and we'll focus on that test.
But do you think it might take you a little bit longer to know what that test is? I guess that's my
I
question.
don't I don't think so. I think that after one test. So, like in a lot of our open-ended programs, we won't require a diagnostic, but we'll jump in with what we know, and then we'll say, okay, based on this, I think I'm going to give you this SAT. I think I'm going to give you this ACT, and we can usually get a sense of it. I don't think it's going to take more than that, and it doesn't have to happen at the beginning. Knowing that a student can focus, for example, say you are a student in the class of 2027 and you want to prep over the summer going into junior year, but you don't have Algebra 2 under your belt. Well, you can prep for the ACT and the ACT alone and take that in the fall and then shift your attention to the SAT. I don't know, Brian, what do you think?
As far as my answer, I joke because we have some friends who live in Long Island who have like 30 tutors that are 30 kids a year. They meet with them 1 hour a week for 9 months, and that's how it is. So I'm like a football coach where if I can't get meaningful results in 6 or 8 weeks, I am roundly fired, and that's that. So now, first of all, in generic suburbia, 2 or 3 times is the norm. I often joke, taking it once is like a hole in one in golf. It happens rarely. Two times, birdie, good job. Three times, par, and hopefully not quadruple bogey, quintuple bogey, etc. So, given that everyone is taking the test more than once, I at least tell people, give me some faith. Take it twice, back to back, super score. So take those mock tests, SAT and ACT, take the stronger test, and then reevaluate after your second real test. Do not panic after the first real test. Some kids get first time test day jitters. So I'm not opposed to preparing for both tests. Certainly do not prepare for both tests at the same time. That alternation thing kills me. We see some others recommend it. Because you can't, it's very schizophrenic to go back and forth each week. But yeah, at least give your stronger test two shots before worrying or changing course.
It's interesting because I've always held with that season analogy for testing, and that's the ideal case. Have you noticed what I feel I've noticed, that students are spending more time at it? They're more like the soccer player who does a school season, then a club season, then another club season, right? It's like you still have seasons where you're focused on specific test dates, but then like you're in for another one.
Gotcha. I mean, I think it depends on it all depends on where you are in the priority list. So among sports and schoolwork and budget and give a damn. So it's all in there mixed together. So I mean, there's no right or wrong. As Mike is fond of saying, everyone's mileage varies. All markets are so different. So it might just be depending on what the client lets you do, what lets you advise.
That makes perfect sense.
I do want to say one thing to calm parents. So we have a lot of parents that I talk to that are really worried of the ACT transition because they preferred the ACT. They want to do the ACT, but they're worried about the lack of material. When the digital SAT came out, there were 4 tests. Here we are, 16 months on, there's 7 tests. And there's plenty of third-party platforms that have sprung up because 7 tests, in many people's opinion, is not enough. The ACT on day one, no different than the digital SAT. Here's the 4-test red book that just got released last week. And then, I'm sure there's more. I mean, there will be at least 3 more per year released as the TIR. So the two are not better or worse than each other, but if anything, there's not a paucity of material because there's literally 101 legacy tests. No one should even use a small fraction of those. And so no one should be worried about running out of tests on that. That should not be a reason to not pick the enhanced ACT.
Yeah, and I want to add to that because we know there is the SAT question bank where we can work on specific individual questions, which is what we do. We want to think about those old TIRs, or we want to think about old test books, right, as its own question bank. And so that's the other thing, is to realize for once there's going to be a lot of value in going back to those old editions of the official guide to find those test questions that can really make for a robust prep.
It's going to be fun. Well, Brian, as always, we could talk with you endlessly. We will talk with you after we stop recording. But for now, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
If listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
EdisonPrep.com. Edison like Thomas Edison, and prep like preparation. So EdisonPrep.com, or you can follow us on Facebook.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
Did you enjoy this episode as much as we did? Find expanded links and more for this and all of our episodes at our show page at testsandtherest.com. While you're there, be sure to explore everything the larger TestBright site has to offer, including real, expert, unbiased answers to the toughest admissions testing questions. Of course, we'd love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to Test and the Rest on your favorite podcast platform. If there's a topic or guest you'd like us to feature, just let us know and spread the word.